The woodpecker's knock. I woke to the sound of incessant pecking against the outer wall of my bedroom. Growing up in an old country home, the noise was of no surprise. In the city, you have to deal with loud traffic and noisy neighbors. In the country, you had to deal with the wildlife. That didn't really make the woodpecker destroying my siding any less annoying. I groggily pounded on the wall and stumbled my way through a short "shut up!" as if the bird would understand me. It seemed to get the general idea, though. I rubbed my eyes with the palms of my hands, trying to wipe away whatever bits of sleep remained. Rolled over and glanced at my phone. It was almost 11. I let out a sigh and laid my head back on the pillow. I'd get up in a few minutes, I told myself. 20 minutes later, I reluctantly shrugged off my sheets and started up my computer. I made a quick trip to the bathroom to empty my bladder, then made my way to the fridge in order to start the process over again. I tried to ignore the stacks of unopened bills and credit card applications sitting on my table as I made my way back to my room. I spent what little remained of the morning trying to fill out job applications. And I do mean trying. My mouse kept drifting its way toward more interesting things. After finishing yet another online video that had nothing to do with anything, I glanced over at the clock in the bottom corner of my screen. It was after 1. I'd managed to spend yet another morning of my life accomplishing absolutely nothing I set out to do. I let out a sigh. Time for some lunch, I suppose. As I made my way to the kitchen, I could hear that stupid bird poking holes in my house again. This time it seemed to be somewhere over the old kitchen door. Well, kitchen window at this point. It hadn't been used as an actual door in years. It had long since been sealed up. But the glass made for a nice view of the backyard, and I didn't really feel like messing with it. The noise got much louder as I entered the kitchen. "Go away!" I shouted at the creature. To my surprise, the knocking stopped. Usually it didn't seem to notice. But hey, if it wanted to listen this time, I wasn't going to complain. I threw together a quick lunch meat sandwich and grabbed another drink from the fridge. I knew going back to my bedroom meant staring blankly at application sheets, so I ate in the kitchen. Naturally, halfway through my sandwich, the woodpecker was at it again. With my mouth still full, I rolled my eyes and got ready to pound on the old wooden door. But then I stopped and, for my own amusement, knocked back with the same rhythmic taps as the bird. I waited, listening closely, curious if it would respond. Nothing. I shook my head, laughing at myself. What had I really expected? I turned my attention back to my sandwich. I was just about to take a bite when I heard the woodpecker at it again. It sounded even closer this time. "Oh, for the love of..." I muttered, turning back to the old door. I froze as it came into view. A chill ran down my spine and my breath came in heavy, ragged draws. I think I might have screamed if I wasn't paralyzed with fear. There, in the window of the old forgotten door, was a creature as black as night, with pale eyes that seemed to just stare off. It had a humanoid form except for the long beak jutting out of its face. It was like one of those masks you see from the Black Plague era. The creature raised a hand and curled its claws into a fist before bringing it down against the glass. It gave a series of 3 slow knocks before cocking its head at me. I couldn't move as it stared at me. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. It crawled along the outer wall like a spider, and the way it moved was unnatural. It continued to watch me as it disappeared past the edge of the window, but even as I lost sight of it, I could still feel its gaze upon me. Without seeing it, I knew exactly where the creature was as it passed the corner of my house. It reappeared in the window over the sink, pausing to stare through me once more. It gave another 3 slow knocks before continuing its path toward the porch. I started to move towards the door. I felt dazed. The creature peered over the curtain at me and continued its ritual knocking. As the third knock sounded, I felt myself reach for the lock. I suddenly felt very compelled to do so. Some sane part of me screamed as I undid the deadbolt, but I continued all the same. I watched curiously as my hand moved to the doorknob, as if it had a mind of its own. It slowly turned the knob and the door popped open. I stepped back, throwing the door open the rest of the way. The creature stood in full glory before me. Again, I felt some sense of sanity shouting at me, telling me to run. But there I stood, silent and still. The thing cocked its head to one side and the other, as if studying me. It took a step forward, crossing the threshold between my kitchen and the outside world. It came to a stop right in front of me, and we both stood motionless for a moment. I was finally beginning to wonder what its intentions were when it suddenly thrust a clawed hand into my chest. I felt my breath catch in my throat, and I barely managed to force a gasp past my lips. I felt ribs break and flesh tear as the creature dug in. The pain wasn't nearly as great as it should have been. Probably some side effect of whatever spell possessed me to let the monster in. Finally, I felt the beast's claws close around my heart, and it gave a sharp tug, and the organ ripped free. I felt hollow. I looked into the creature's eyes and realized it had never broken eye contact. I could feel myself beginning to lose consciousness. Whatever inexplicable force was keeping me alive was beginning to wear thin. I began to wobble, starting to lose the strength to stand. The creature held up my heart, staring at it for a moment. Everything seemed to move in slow motion as I began to fall. The beast tossed my once beating heart into the air and opened its beak. Several mouths, each lined with rows upon rows of teeth, jutted out, snatching the heart from the air. And then the mouths disappeared as quickly as they had come. I hit the ground. I no longer felt any pain of any kind, but I could feel myself drifting, as if sleep was trying to take hold. I briefly fought for consciousness as I stared up at the creature. It looked down at me, watching me die. Just before I faded away, I looked into its pale eyes. It looked disappointed.